Great to see you here in this new video. In this video, I will look at the risk management process. First step is to define the different risk management process steps. Then I want to link the risk processes to the project management process. And then I will have a look at the risk events that can occur during the different project management process steps. Let's first have a look at the risk management processes. So first of all, we have risk planning. Risk planning is where I create the risk management plan. The second step is risk identification. Then we have risk qualification, risk quantification. Then we plan the risk responses, we implement the risk responses, and we control the risks. Now, basically what happened in the previous risk management processes, implement risk responses and plan risk responses were in fact replaced by one process step, which was implement risk processes. We didn't plan the risk responses. Now, in the new version, we have this extra step, plan risk responses. Risk planning is creating the risk management plan. We are going to define how we will deal with risk. What are the tools we create or we use to create the risk management plan? What is part of the plan? We have to define elements like probabilities. How do we create a probability and impact matrix and things like that. A second element that we're going to look at is risk identification. How are we going to do the risk identification? Where do we find all these risks? Based on all the risks that we have identified, we have to qualify them. We will have too many risks to deal with. So basically what we have to do is to look at a way to qualify the risks. Which are the risks that we have to deal with? Which are the risks we have to monitor? And basically, which are the risks we will accept? When we talk about risks, don't forget we're talking about threats and opportunities. Once we identified the risks that we have to quantify, we go to risk quantification. Here we're going to determine what is the cost of those risks, and we look at an expected monetary value approach because we have probability and the impact of the risk. The product of those will give us an idea what the probabilistic approach of the risk is, the probabilistic cost of the risk. Once we identify that, we're going to plan the risk responses. We look at all those risks that we quantified, and we are going to define the responses that we will implement during project execution. And once we go to project execution, we will implement the risk responses. So we will put them at work, we will integrate them in the plan, we will execute them, and of course we have to verify if our risk management is properly executed. So we have to review if everything is working the way it should, and of course from there on we can redo the cycle. We can review what we have to do for risk planning, and of course we will look at risk identification. It's very important to know that depending on the step of the project or the phase of the project, that risks may change, and it may be necessary to go through this cycle multiple times. Next overview is to link the risk processes to the project management processes or the process itself. Now we see already that in initiation we don't have any risk-related processes. The only thing we have in the charter is that we have a high-level description of the risks, the possible risks, and that's basically it. Basically those risks may come from the business case, may come from general items that we know about the work that we are going to do, but it's not really related to the risk management process. In planning, we have in fact 5 elements that we are going to do, 5 risk management process steps. We have plan risk management, we identify the risks, we qualify the risks, we quantify the risks, and we plan the risk responses. When we go to executing, we implement the risk responses, and during monitor and control, we are controlling the risks. So these are in fact the processes linked to the project management process step. It is also very important to understand how risk and life cycle steps are connected. And I put everything here in a linear approach. We look at initiation and definition. We look at planning. We look at execute, monitor, and control. I take them together. And we look at closeout. But we can, in fact, start again. Now we have to see what risk elements can we have, for example, during initiation and definition. We may be confronted with lack of information, unclear objectives. We don't have a subject matter expert available, and there may not be a feasibility study. So there may be some elements that we miss at this moment and that we will only obtain later during the project management process. The planning, well, we can have an unclear statement of work, no management support, and limited team experience. Typically elements that can be resolved. We have to identify where we have those problems. And of course, once we know where we have the problems, we can find a way to resolve them. During execute, monitor, and control, basically during execution, we can have strikes, acts of God, competition and changes. We may have an inadequate control system, and we can have the classical risk events that are occurring. When we look at monitor and control, we may find issues of quality. People may be leaving the project. We may have some customer acceptance problems, and there may be some cash flow issues that we will encounter. Now, basically, these are the elements related to the life cycle steps of the project, and it's very important to understand what can go wrong during these different steps. It is clear that for your specific environment and your specific company or organization and knowledge, you can find out what are the elements that you can encounter or what elements you encounter the most. And of course, in that case, you can take measures to deal with it. So that was it for the risk management process. I'm looking forward to seeing you in one of our next videos. Thank you and bye-bye.